So now I would like to introduce Joe O'Connell. He's our Lincoln and Central Avenue station artist. He is going to present his 30% concept, and afterwards, we will be open for discussion and questions.
Thank you, MB. I just want to verify, can everybody hear me?
We sure can, thank you.
Great, thank you. The artwork I've designed for the Lincoln Central Avenue station has three components, each inspired by the historical experience of residents in the area and inspired by an in-person visit in which I met and spoke with many. So those three components include, and here's where I'd like to share the screen, if that's possible. There we go. Give me just a second. And so one of the first component is the family names of residents who have lived in the area, some of them for 4 or more generations. So it's a pretty involved process using census data and both formal and informal sources to capture all the names of people who have lent their history to this neighborhood. When I spoke to people, many times they would recall the names of families who'd grown up in that area. They had pride in their homes, in their work, and in their community, but a lot of that pride focused itself around their family name and the names of other families they knew. It's as if people could accept, a house wearing out and being replaced, their kids may move away, their neighborhood changes, even themselves might die or pass out of the neighborhood. But to accept their family having lived there and not left a trace was difficult. So in the image you can see, we have these two fairly monumental sculptures on the two ends that have the family names cut into them. And then there's panels all at ground level with family names of people who have lived in the neighborhood. So this is hundreds of names. It's something permanent, something that you can touch, that casts a shadow in the daytime and projects out at night. Find a good night view. These project onto the people and onto the platforms that you can touch, that you can come back to. And it says to new people moving into the area that this is a place that has been loved, worked in, lived in by others for many generations. And the more that a family has been there, the more residents it's had, the more times that name would appear. There's actually a fair amount of work involved in getting the names right. We have to define the neighborhood boundaries and then a period of time. And then it's a fair amount of census research because, of course, the census is every 4 years. We also, and that's how we would develop a preliminary list of names. We also know that people live in an area and they're not formally recognized. So it's also a project to go back to current residents and spread the word to find and recover the names of people who have lived in this area who may not be part of the formal census record. And at the end of that process, we put this together and for a period of time invite comment and changes, and then it becomes that permanent, that record of families who have lived there. And so the entire lower section of the station is the presentation in concrete form of family names. The second aspect of the art is hats. Hats express individual style, but also group membership. So the idea of using hats to represent the different identities that residents of this area value came from a conversation with Earl Wilcox, but then many other people, other residents, added their own ideas. So here's just a few ideas of some of the hats. An Army helmet, a vintage American Legion cap to celebrate military service and the pride associated with American Legion Post 41, a fedora associated with lowrider culture and a different generation's sense of pride in the area, a Panama hat, a cloche hat, or a Victorian wide brim hat. We believe that some of the first and second generation women who lived in the area would have worn those hats in the probably 20s through the 40s, and we want to capture as many women's hats as possible. The Elks hat worn by members of the Elks Club on the west side, and potentially a mariachi hat, which speaks to a musical history and is more flamboyant. So the hats that you see here in these renderings are placeholders. We'd be refining those concepts, and they'd be right overhead. You'd stand under a hat. The third component of the art that we're still working out how to do is people in the neighborhood have a lot of stories and a lot of colorful memories and strong opinions, some of which disagree, but they all belong to somebody. So we think that the best approach might be to let people speak and let those stories play out. There's been a number of oral history projects that have collected stories from current and former residents. We're still considering how to include those. One of the issues is we can't compete with the station announcements. So we might be looking into providing QR codes that as people are there with their phones, they could access oral histories. And that doesn't have a particular location. It would be throughout the station. I'm going to go to an over. So this is it's hard to escape the names. They surround you. They project out from these towers at the end. Day and night, they're casting shadows. And they serve as a permanent concrete reference for who's lived in this area. This is the station at a glance. The hats run the length of the station. At night, we use a type of light fixture that projects from a point source using a unique design. And so the actual projection is sharper than what you see here. You'd actually be able to see the names distinctly. And I'll close with this overall view of the station.
Okay, so thank you, Joe. We are now going to open the meeting up for questions. Julie will provide you instructions on how to participate in this part.
Great, thank you everyone for your patience. I just had a second where I needed to find my place. So what does this all mean? If you would like to ask a question, you will need to raise your hand so that we can unmute you. For those who have joined the meeting via WebEx, we are now displaying instructions on how to raise your hand. If you have accessed WebEx via your internet browser, please locate the raise hand icon found within options, which is the icon with the 3 vertical dots. For those who have joined via the WebEx app, either on your computer or your smartphone, you will be able to access the raised hand icon via the participants panel. If you have called into the meeting, you may raise your hand by hitting the *3 on your phone. Ryan, do we have any questions right now?
Thank you, Julie. We do have a few questions. I'm going to start first with a question that I received via the chat. Is it too late to submit a name of a family that lived in the area?
Not at all. We have not even begun collecting names. There will be many opportunities.
And I want to remind everyone that this is a concept that we're showing. So things, will evolve and partly based on your input. So this is at the very beginning of the project, like Joe said.
Thank you. And we do have a raised hand from Eva Olivis. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Eva.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. First of all, I need to thank MB. Thank you so much for listening to the neighborhoods and coming back with some new ideas. I have to say, of all the ideas I've seen so far, so I think there still needs to be some things developed, but this concept of capturing the names of the people and the stories of the neighborhood is one that we've always talked about. So I'm very excited to see how this can move forward. So I love the lighting idea. I love being able to see the names on the concrete and on those panels. So I'm actually looking forward to what more is coming. But thank you so much for listening to the people in the neighborhood, and I'm anxious to see how it's going to blossom, hopefully, in a way that the neighbor. I have one question though. As you know, the past decade has been a real transition for this neighborhood. With the development of the warehouse district, with the new development that's happening, in particular in Grant Park, but that has already occurred in Central Park. And it's more a thought than a question, I guess, is how do we not only embrace all the stories of the people who've been there and the families who have been there, and I really, really agree about that. The legacy of the memories is what people are very afraid of losing. So I think that we're on the right track. But is there a way to incorporate something about welcoming the newcomers to the neighborhoods? So again, I don't know what I'm saying. I just want to plant that thought about how do we wrap the old and the new, I guess is what I'm saying. So, but I compliment you. Jay did tell me he had participated in the sessions, and I think I think he might have thought he wasn't quite sure what my opinion would be, but I was very happy to hear him talk about the concept. And so the final artwork, is pending, but the concept I love. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I can answer. You hit the nail on the head. How do you honor the past and welcome new residents? And I talked to some people who weren't specifically in the neighborhood, but who have a lot of knowledge and are thinking about who might be moving in. And one of the ideas that came forward is to make the presentation of the names very modern and contemporary. It's like a walk through light sculpture, the way the projection works, in a way that appeals, I think, to a very contemporary urban aesthetic. For the one that, so is to take names that are from 50 to 80 or some years ago and present them as worthy of a very contemporary artistic treatment, like a walk through light sculpture. That's the way I try to bring the two together.
Yeah, I do think that this is a transition point. I mean, it really is transitioning, from the main downtown area into the neighborhood area. So Central City South has been a community that really wants to embrace everybody who's been there. and really recognize their contribution to, the history of the city. But it's also been a very welcoming neighborhood and community where they have been prepared and waiting for this transition to happen. And, well, not transition, but transformation, and so this is a way for them not to feel forgotten. So I'm very excited about to see what will come.
Thank you, Ava. I'm going to go ahead and place you back on mute. All right. We have another question from the chat that I'm going to go ahead and read. It is difficult to see the geographic area this collection of names covers. Which neighborhoods, example, Tres Milpas, etc., does your research cover?
That's the first step in kind of defining the boundaries. And I think the boundary doesn't correspond to official neighborhood designations. I think it's more of a psychic boundary, and that's where I'd like to draw upon current residents who have deep roots there. It's a rectangle. It's south of the warehouse district, possibly including edges of the warehouse district. But I would like to seek your suggestions. We haven't defined that yet.
Thank you. And we've got some more raised hands, so I'll go and answer those in order. And we'll start with Silverio Ontiveros. Silverio, you've been unmuted.
I had an opportunity to look at the historical work that came out of the Historic Preservation Office by Gene Reynolds in 1999. Hello?
Joe, I think
sorry.
the first part of his question got muted. I think he's asking if you have had a chance to look at the.
I have not had a chance to acquaint myself with that.
That's a history of Grant Park neighborhoods put together by Gene Reynolds through the Phoenix Historic Preservation Office. They should be able to send that to you.
That would be wonderful.
That was my only question.
Thank you, Silverio. Right, we have a raised hand also from Katie Gerardo Mendoza. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Katie.
Okay. Thank you. I'm a former resident of Golden Gate, and I had a question regarding some of the markets that used to be in the area. A part of your research, have you thought about incorporating visions and, of course, the names of the people who own the various markets within the geographic area of Tres Milpas and Golden Gate?
That has come up. Certainly, if they're residents of the area, their name would be included. But for someone who might live outside but had a big part in the community through owning a business there, I think that's a possibility. We just haven't answered that question yet.
Okay.
Because in a way, they have.
I'm sorry.
They've given years of their life to the neighborhood, even if they may not have lived in it. I think that's going to be part of the defining the boundaries.
Okay, great. I was hoping that maybe that would be included as well, because I'm sure you recognize the impact of some of those communities that had just those little neighborhood markets, and they were steady.
Yeah.
We provided them with steady customers, that's for sure. But the other thing is regarding the hats, have you also considered whether or not the railroad in that general area right there north of Lincoln might play a part in any of those hats that you're going to use?
Oh, I think that's a great idea. The hats idea came from the way people, sometimes different generations, well, one, how new immigrants distinguish themselves maybe from an agricultural past and then express their allegiance to particular types of work and identity, and then successive generations distinguish themselves from their parents. It's fascinating how hats are both an individual marker of style, but express what group you're in. And the railroad is another excellent example.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. I'd like to remind all of our audience participants to please lower your hands after you've asked your questions, lest we think you have more questions. And at this time, Julie, I don't think we have any other questions in queue, so would you mind reading the instructions just in case anyone missed out on those?
No, not at all. For those who have joined the meeting via WebEx, we are now displaying instructions on how to raise your hand. If you have accessed WebEx via your internet browser, please locate the raise hand icon found within Options, which is the icon with the 3 vertical dots. For those who have joined via the WebEx app, either on your computer or your smartphone, you will be able to access the raise hand icon via the participants panel. Do we have any other questions, Ryan? Or comments?
Well, I do still see a raised hand, so I'm going to check in with Silverio here just to ensure that there isn't a new question. Silverio, we have unmuted you. Okay, placing Silverio back on mute. Okay, we did just have something come through on chat here. All right, let's see. Have you determined a method to gather names, or did I miss that part?
I went through it a little quickly, probably too quickly. I showed a slide of a process. I could share that again, but I'll just go through it in a nutshell. I want to work with current residents to define what area are we talking about, specifically what streets, and then how far back in time do we go, probably till about 1910 forward, but we could go earlier. And then the first step would be official census data, which is looking through every 4 years of census data to get a group of names. But we know that that doesn't catch everybody who live in an area, because some people may be undocumented or be living there informally, even if their registered address is different. So that's where we do a project where we reach out to current residents and through their networks, reach out to others to make sure we have all of the names still within people's memory. So it's going to be a bit of an outreach and a research project with many steps. And then we'll have that list available on a website for people to say, hey, I looked and my name isn't there, or you're missing this person that I knew about. So it will be a period of time when that's open for corrections.
Thank you. Okay, we have another couple of questions that have come through on my chat here. How long can the community give comment?
I think that depends on the overall schedule, but I could see us leaving it open for months, potentially. If you mean comment on the names.
Right. So I think what we'll do is when we have actually an original video which shows these concepts. They're the same concepts, but it's slightly different. We're working through modifications, and we will continue to do throughout this concept period, and certainly as we're hearing feedback from everyone. So that will be on our website for a little while, and then as we move forward, obviously there's a large portion of this project which is Joe reaching out and working with the community, and so that we will, once we get into our final design and then into Joe actually starting to work on this, that is going to be open. We'll be advertising the best ways to connect with Joe, and we'll have worked out a better plan to reach out to the community. So for just comments on the concept, probably Julie, I can't remember how long we were going to have that up on the website. I apologize.
So what MB is talking about is we have a survey that asks just a question about basically what would you like to see in the art? Do you have any comments or questions? And it's available on our Spanish and English site. That's going to be open. It was supposed to be through the weekend. Now maybe that's something that we can keep it open for another week longer. To be able to do that. There's also, my information is on the webpage and it's on the main Valley Metro site. You can contact me. I have no problem at all getting you in touch with MB and the artist. I've had numerous people email me already with their comments who couldn't be at this meeting. And some have asked to talk to Joe. And so we'll do best to accommodate you in any way we can. So there's the survey, and please tell your friends and family, anyone that you know, to go on and fill out that survey. That really does help the artist, help Joe, and you can also get a hold of me.
Thanks, Julie.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Got another question here. Are you going to recognize any critical spots like the American Legion, St. Anthony's, just to name a few? And if you are, how are you going to do that?
This art piece is more about people's identity, but my understanding is there will be a historical plaque that speaks to the history of the whole neighborhood that will be co-located at the station, but not
Right.
produced as part of the art project.
Correct. I'll jump in. That's something that the city of Phoenix is working with us on, these historical plaques that are on stations. So just to clarify.
And we do have several comments in the chat here thanking the presenters for their answers. At this point in time, I do not see any other questions in the chat. And I do not see any new raised hands.
Ryan, if I could interrupt for a second. So as we've been going through the questions and the comments, I've been writing them down, and they are going to be available on the website that you accessed for this specific art project. And so as we get those daily, I'm going to be updating that. And so you'll be able to see real time what people are asking, what kind of comments we're getting. So please, like I said, feel free to go online or give me a call, and that will be added to the website daily.
Thank you for that, Julie. We got a couple of questions here. One of them is, are you able to share the link now?
The link to the website? I can share that over the chat. Ryan, would that work? Or
Yes,
should I
it's the
share it
link
on
to
my
the website.
screen?
Yes, we got clarification. Yeah, feel free to put that in the chat. Just make sure you send it to all attendees, not just the presenters.
Perfect.
Okay, and then we do have another question. Where exactly will the platform be located? In front of the restaurant?
My understanding is it's not, when I visited the site, it's not adjacent to any existing businesses.
Right. I believe it's just north of Lincoln. So it's on the corner. And there's a sister station, as it were, on First Avenue and Lincoln on the other side. And I might also mention for the person who was asking about the locations, Blessing Hancock is the artist on that station, and she actually is also dealing with some of those issues as well. So you guys are fortunate to have two stations kind of in proximity and with artists that are both working very much in the community but on slightly different aspects. So you get a twofer here.
Okay, new question just came through. Regarding the plaques commemorating locations in the area, is there information about those that's going to be included on the website?
We are not at that point yet. Again, this is a City of Phoenix provides the text. They're working with their historical society or historical group. So I will try to, I'll look into that. Let me get back to you with that information. They do have a public process. So I'll make sure that we have that on the website.
Thank you, MB. At present, I am not seeing any raised hands or any other questions in the chat. We can wait a couple of moments here to see if any others pop up. Okay, we have a new question popped in. Will there be a description of what the hats represent?
I think that makes a lot of sense, because otherwise they're just decoration. So I think we could do an engraved explanation of what the hat is and who and what groups might have worn that hat with each hat, and that would be motivation to walk the length of the station and look at each hat and stand under each one and pretend you're that group. So yeah, I think we could commit to doing it. It wouldn't do the job they're supposed to do if we didn't explain. I think you're right.
Thank you. And again, at present, I am not seeing any newly raised hands nor any new messages in the chat here. I'll give it a moment. So we have a fun little comment here. Maybe position the hats so people could take a selfie.
I think that's a great idea. That we haven't exactly finalized the location on the station, and I think there's certain requirements for safety and not obscuring signage. But if there was a way to put the hats that's safe, that you could stand so that it appears you're wearing the hat, and then maybe where your head is where the description is, we'll do it. I think that's a great idea. We just have to work. There's a whole lot of engineering constraints with the station, with lines of visibility and safety, but we will do our best to make that happen.
I'm thinking of a lot of reasons that will be very difficult to do. Just safety mainly, but yeah, I think let's explore. That's why this is a concept. So definitely we can explore.
So maybe you hold your camera down and it's looking up at your head and the hat is above and behind you in a safe location. We'll have to figure that one out.
And at present, I am not seeing any new chats nor any newly raised hands.
Joe, if you want to, do you want to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about your background and what, you know, what you've done to this point, what your art ideas are?
Sure. So my educational background is in history and anthropology and liberal arts, broadly speaking. I am myself a third generation immigrant from the East Coast. And the places where my grandparents would take me when I was young and growing up, if you do a little sleight of hand, are similar to this neighborhood, and the connection that people felt to the neighborhood is very strong. I make art typically more curvaceous and colorful and interactive, but this seems like an opportunity to do a way to honor something that's real rather than something that's coming out of my imagination. And what is more real than years spent giving your life to a location next to other families doing the same thing? And to address one other question, the American Legion Post 41 is such a significant historic and community center. We will be alluding to that with, American Legion hats and some hats that reference military service. And I love the idea of explaining those hats and who would wear them. We can put little bits of that history with each hat. But then also trying to get the hats of women and different generations, trying to capture the full range of identities through the hats.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Ryan, do we have any more questions?
At present, I am
comments?
seeing none. At present, I am seeing none.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, I think if there's no more questions or comments, we will end here then. I want to thank you all very much for attending. And please, again, as Julie mentioned, tell your friends and neighbors and visit the website. And we will, as the design progresses, we will definitely be posting that and sharing it with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.